Previously I talked about the field of ethics generally. Now I will explain the concept of value and the different types of ethical theories. Because this kind of discussion is, in a way, about ethics at a higher level of abstraction, rather than talking about the ethical norms themselves, it is called metaethics. Philosophers often analyze concepts. The analysis of ethical or moral views is called metaethics. A key concept for ethics is value. The study of values specifically is called axiology. Not all values have to do with ethics, at least not as usually understood. One of the most famous Finnish philosophers, Georg Henrik von Wright, whom you have probably never heard of unless you are either Finnish or a student of philosophy, wrote an analysis of the concept of good titled The Varieties of Goodness in 1963. It has been translated to Finnish as Hyvän muunnelmat by Vesa Oittinen in 2001. Some people are unhappy to learn that the book shows that goodness is not one thing, but rather there are many different kinds of goodness. Here, for example, are some varieties of goodness. Instrumental good. A hammer is good for nailing things down. A rock might work, but it is not as good. The instrumental goodness of something depends on how well it can be used for some purpose. Technical good. The skill level at doing something. How well one is able to perform the skill in question. I am not very good at using hammers and nails, but I can type well enough. Olympic athletes are incredibly good at the things they compete in. Utilitarian good. Providing free education is beneficial for all members of society. Utilitarian goodness can be closely connected to instrumental goodness. Things that are beneficial for us may be so because they enable us to do other things. Good infrastructure enables traveling, good hygiene, and even internet connection. Having enough income enables us to not be deprived of food and shelter, and to be able to purchase things we want, like philosophy books. General welfare in a society increases public safety and peaceful coexistence for all. Good for health. Using bicycle as a daily means of transportation is good for your health. The organs of your body are good if they function effectively. Good health or wellness is mostly defined as absence of poor health and sickness. Hedonistic good. Eating good food is a pleasure you can enjoy. So is reading a good book. You may be able to enjoy the company of other people as well. Pleasure and enjoyment are not only sensual, but have a mental aspect as well. Pain, such as a muscle ache resulting from exercise, can feel good. Pushing yourself past what you have considered your physical limits may cause you suffering, but also intense mental pleasure. So I'm told. Happiness and the good of man. Enjoying the conditions of one's life. For example, I live in relative poverty, but as long as I can do what I consider important, remain mostly in control of my own life, and do not suffer from deprivation, I am as happy as I can be. Luck and innate dispositions are significant for achieving happiness. Moral good or doing good. Actions have consequences for other people. Those consequences can be beneficial or harmful to them. The intention of the actor is important in assessing the moral value of the act. A good person is, in a way, good in a technical and utilitarian sense, but it can be argued that moral good is also something separate, independent of other goods. Some things or acts can have moral value while others may be amoral, which is different from immoral. It is fairly obvious that if I beat up a child, I am behaving immorally. I act contrary to all, or at least my own, morals. But if I drink a cup of coffee, that has no relevance to morality or ethics, so the act is called amoral. Whether I choose to watch YouTube videos or go for a walk in the park is also an amoral choice. Values are often seen as either intrinsic or instrumental. Intrinsic value means something that is good in itself, while an instrumental value is only good as a means for attaining something else. For example, money is something you may need to get what you really want, so it only has instrumental value, while the thing you really want, to study philosophy without being bothered by mundane things, has intrinsic value. How you value things may differ significantly from how others value it. Some might argue that there are things that have intrinsic value for all, but I will leave you to think about that possibility on your own, at least for now. Values can be analyzed in a descriptive manner in metaethics. That is, the philosopher can analyze how value judgments are used, what is being valued, and so on. Making prescriptive value judgments belongs to normative ethics. As values determine our goals and the contents of our ethical norms and morals, it seems pretty important to think of what they are fundamentally, and what can be known about them. What is their relationship with facts about the world, for example? One very basic distinction between ethical theories is between realism and relativism. Moral or ethical relativism includes the view that values are simply cultural constructs and vary from culture to culture. This is, of course, known as cultural relativism. Another form of relativism is the view that values are subjective. Each individual has their own values and there is nothing objective about them. This is obviously called subjectivism. In opposition to this, the view that objective values actually do exist, independently of us ethical thinkers, can be called objectivism. This is not to be confused with a certain movement or organization that resembles religion while calling itself a philosophy. As this view, objectivism, considers moral values to be real entities, it is obviously a form of moral realism. Another way to categorize different ethical theories is based on whether or not they consider statements about good and evil to be such that they can be either true or false. Theories that do treat them as such are in the category of moral cognitivism, while theories that deny this are forms of moral non-cognitivism, for lack of a better term. David Hume supported non-cognitivism by stating what is now known as Hume's guillotine: no ought from is. From the fact that something is so and so, we cannot deduce how things ought to be. The statements of fact are conceptually different from statements of norms, so one type of statement cannot be derived from the other type. Whether he actually supported this view himself or not may be contentious, but this is how the guillotine bearing his name is typically explained. Emotivism is an example of non-cognitivism. It is the view that statements about moral norms and values are simply expressions of emotions. For example, if I say that Mr. Trump is evil, I am merely expressing my dislike of the person, not making a factual claim. According to this view, the reason why killing people for fun is widely considered immoral is simply that most people feel the same way about such behavior. You can probably tell that emotivism is a form of relativism and realize that all forms of relativism are also forms of non-cognitivism. They deny the existence of objective reality regarding moral values and norms, so there can be no factual knowledge about such things. All forms of cognitivism, contrary to what you might now think, are not forms of realism. For example, error theorists claim that moral statements are always false, because moral values are not real. Other forms of cognitivism are probably more popular. Moral realism is one of them. It is the view that moral values or norms are facts, that in some way you can be right or wrong about such things. How you allegedly gain knowledge about them is a separate question. Intuitionism is the view that we have access to knowledge about right and wrong and other such things through our intuition. This is supposed to be our innate ability to detect such things, not simply experience subjective emotions, but actually become aware of moral facts. Pretty hard to prove, though. Naturalism bases morals on natural facts. G.E. Moore called it the naturalistic fallacy, claiming that good is something that cannot be analyzed in terms of natural qualities, or anything at all. It is simply good. This is similar to Hume's guillotine. For example, you could argue that because 1. Eating lots of fatty food is harmful to your health, therefore 2. You should not eat too much of it. Hume would point out that you are missing something from between the statements that would connect them. You might add the claim that 1a, you should not harm your health. But this is a norm that is not based on the facts obviously present to us. Moore would insist that moral values cannot be based on such facts at all. A simplistic claim that something is good because it is natural is clearly false, as nature is full of suffering, unfairness, and harmful things. If the naturalistic fallacy is understood like that, it is not very contentious. But understood as to claim that naturalism is a fallacy, because moral values are real and unanalyzable in terms of natural qualities or phenomena of nature, as Moore claimed, it becomes more interesting. For example, one could argue that the root of morality is based on our biology. As an animal species evolved to live in groups, we naturally developed moral behavior as well. Evolutionary psychology can help explain how it works and why it is the way it is. Finally, supernaturalism is the belief that values and norms are based on something supernatural, such as the will of God or gods. This is immediately problematic, as claiming to know the will, or even the existence, of entities like gods is implausible. But more than that, it raises the problem known as Euthyphros' dilemma. The name comes from one of Plato's dialogues. The problem, simply put, is this. Is something good because God wills it, or does God will it because it is good? If it is only good because God wills it, it seems like just a special case of relativism. If, on the other hand, God wills it because it is good, then appealing to God is superfluous, unnecessary, as the goodness of the thing or act does not depend on God, as originally claimed. There is also a view called institutionalism, which claims that the truth of moral statements depends on the community or institution a person belongs to. This is like cultural relativism, but whereas cultural relativists usually claim that a claim is true only within the culture, institutionalism seems to be making claims about objective truths. So, a statement that is true about my values would be true because my imaginary community of philosophers agrees that it is so, while the same statement about you could be different if it is not agreed to be true in your institution. Sounds untenable, but I will not pursue it further here. I have now given a basic outline of what ethics is about, as well as explained the most important metaethical distinctions. Next, I will turn to what many think of as ethics proper, by explaining the main types of prescriptive or normative ethics, the theories about right and wrong, good and evil, what is acceptable and what is not, or how to choose what to do in a given situation. Bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome. According to this view, the reason why killing people is fun,